Hello, world, and welcome to our live stream. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Garrett.
And today we're joined by special guests, plural, Ben Jackson and Max Hedstrom, writers, creators, and artists of Rokan, here to tell us about their project live on Indiegogo. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here. I love that intro music, by the way. It reminds me of...
See?
Sounds like F-Zero Matt.
Every time he plays the intro, he starts punching me, and he's like, "I love this intro I made."
I do. So, it's
really
it's
dope.
Like chunky '90s guitars with the dueling harmonics. I love it.
So if you ever want to get Aaron's good side, just be like, "Hey man, that intro you did, it really gets me pumping," and he'll just be like, "Yeah."
We were actually just talking about this. So before we get into the comic book, why don't you guys tell us where you're from and where you're at?
Yeah, introduce yourselves.
Yeah, let's get to know you a bit better.
Go on, Ben. Yours is more interesting.
Well, that's a hard question for me to answer. I was born in Bogota. I grew up in Buffalo. More recently, I live in Florida. I spend the most time in Florida, so I guess I could say I live in Florida, but I'm in Bogota presently. So I'm all over the place. But I guess Florida is the short answer.
I, however, live in a castle in England, in the centre of England. No, it's not really a castle.
Oh,
it's a small semi-detached house in a little town called Lichfield, in the very centre of England.
That's really cool.
In New England, all of the towns here are named after English towns. And there's a Litchfield, maybe a half an hour, 45 minutes from here. So
yeah, that's fun.
Lichfield, the main trading point of England for hundreds of years. There you go.
Yeah, and we stole the name and kicked it all out. So
now it's just some
part
suburb
of
in Connecticut
that used to be Mercia.
Quite possibly, yes.
We were watching that Last Kingdom on Netflix.
Yeah, watch that.
Yeah, the Kingdom of Mercy. Yeah, that was cool. I like that show.
When you come down, Ben, I'll show you around.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite saints was from there, Saint Chad.
Yes.
Saint Chad from Murica, not Mercia.
There's a St. Chad's Church down the road from us.
I think the one Mercian that I always know about is King Penda, who's the last pagan warlord from Mercia.
Well, he and Chad wouldn't have been friends then, I'm sure.
Yeah, no.
Probably not. A wore black and white fursuit.
Oh, Jesus. That's such a stretch. That's such a bad
I don't know. I was giving it a shot.
Oh.
So how did y'all gents get into comics? Max, you're an artist. You go first.
Oh man, so I'm dyslexic, and I was born in the 80s, and that wasn't recognised in the 80s really. So I had a hard time being pushed through school, and my mother really wanted me to start reading in any form that I possibly could. And after another bad report from school, I came home to a big pile of comic books in the living room that she'd gone out and picked up. Of course, being in England, those comic books were all 2000 AD and heavy metal and slaying and stuff like that, because we never really got the American sort of Marvel and DC till, at least we didn't get it on a regular basis until sort of the later 90s. So I was kind of
glad you guys didn't, because with the proliferation of the Marvel Western superhero and DC styles, that I like the fact that England had, or I should say, I like the aesthetic of the English comics, the Euro comics. Like it was so different. And we're better for having a variety.
Yeah,
it's good to hear that, because I mean, there was a point where that seems to be a growing consensus at the moment. But there was a time where, especially among the American market, that wasn't the consensus at all, you know. And trying to sort of have that diversity of styles in comic books was a tough hand to play if you were an up and coming sort of artist, because there's a house style, right? And everybody wants to keep to that house style. But I think now, with this explosion of sort of independent books, like that sort of diversity in styles just getting bigger. It's great. I love it. So so that's how I got into books, really. I mean, it unfortunately for my mother, it didn't change anything about my reading. I just became sort of obsessed with the artwork and wanted to draw even more instead of reading. So, as Ben dropped out.
What about you, Ben? What was the first book that hooked you into comics?
I think he's just dropped out.
Yeah.
This keeps happening to him, huh?
Yes, he's got terrible.
I guess
internet.
you're gonna have to tell us why pizza's the best. Pepperoni is the best pizza topping for him. I wanted to learn his answer. So all right, we covered that. You're attracted more to art, I guess, than you are to like the dialogue. But what about story? When you read a comic book, do you read a comic more because you're attracted to the art, or are you looking for the good story?
Okay, well, it's always the art, but the if the narrative's strong enough, it'll pull me in. So like stuff like the classics, like Watchmen and Sin City and all of those big ones, like they all eventually pulled me in. Although with somebody like me who finds who's difficult with the written word, it's always a sort of a fight to get me. But once I'm in, I mean, if the story's good, I'll definitely be in there.
Yes, it's funny. I mean, I've never had any struggles with my reading. I can only imagine how much more difficult that makes things. I'm just lazy with reading, and when I read a comic, a lot of times I don't want to suffer through the words. Usually because the art hasn't put them in front of me in a way which makes me want to read them. But when you find a really good book, I think it's just like it's hard not to read it, especially if the art knows how to deliver that. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, sorry, carry on.
No, go right ahead.
I suppose I've always looked at comics as the sort of the missing link between books and film, and I'm a massive film fan. And if you get the right creative partnership in a comic book, things can go great. And I feel the same way about film as well. A director and a writer, you can get a great director and a fantastic writer, but if their styles don't gel, then the movie won't gel. And I feel the same way about sort of an artist and a writer. I think me and Ben just happen to work very well on the book. At least we feel we're working very well on this book at the moment.
So we're definitely hear that. It's all about the teamwork, the partnership, the dialogue. Well, it's interesting that you guys have managed to do that with you in the UK and him in South America, the time zone difference and everything like that. But it seems like you guys have a good rapport and you maintain good communication.
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry, Mike, you go ahead. I've been talking for loads. No, you go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like we figured out like all of the moving parts and how to work them. You know, when you're little, you have all these grand ideas of things you're gonna do and you don't do them. But you know, Max and I, we're both very committed to this, so we sort it out. So we don't let anything fall through the cracks. We figure out what times we're both awake, so it doesn't matter, you know, the time zone difference. We still know when we're likely to get in touch with one another. We figured out a system that works as far as me writing the script and me making outlines and sending them to Max. And what he was saying about the dynamic is true. Like we have the same vision and we have the same priorities, and we both want the book to be the best that it can be. So for that reason, both of us are very willing. Each of us, I should say, is very willing to sort of give in if the other has a better idea. And we do that all the time. Like nobody's keeping score. So I don't know how many times we do Max's idea or how many times we do my idea, but so far we've been able to agree as long as it's best for the book. And the reason that we're able to do that is because we have very different skill sets. So we're bringing very different things to the table. Max as the artist, obviously, and me being the writer. So, if Max tells me, I like this idea, but I think this character should look more like this, it's very easy to know whether we should do it or not. And if there's some element that's to do with the story that means we can't do that, then I make that clear, and he's fine with that. And otherwise, I'm very open to changing things to go along with the way he thinks they should go, as far as the visual aspect. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I asked Max just a second ago whether or not he's more attracted to art or story. So I'm going to ask you, when you look at a comic book, do you find yourself reading books more because there's a certain artist on it, or more because there's a certain writer on it? I know it's hard to separate the two, but you have to draw the line. We have to ask this question.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to go with the story because, I mean, good art sells a book a lot more easily because you notice art more quickly than you do the story. You have to sort of be invested before you know if the story is good or not. But there are stories that I read and writers that I follow, even though the art is pretty mediocre in those books, just because I'm invested in the story and I'm invested in the writer, and I trust the writer and I want to know what he or she has to say. So yeah, I always say this, but it's always true. I think that the Rokan story is so interesting and so sufficiently unique that it could carry mediocre art in that way. But at the same time, Max's art is so far above par as far as the quality. Like it's better than average quality. It doesn't even begin to cover it. And his art is so good that even if he were drawing a dumb story or a cliche, uninteresting story, people would still buy it just for the art. So I really think the only reason that I got to work with such a great artist is because the story that I brought to the table is of the same caliber of quality.
So real quick, let me take a moment to address the people in the chat. We're going to say hello to Happy Jam Jam. Thanks for tuning in. Frog G. Unfortunately, I don't know if links are still working. So they are working again? Oh, look at that. Maybe we're getting away with it. D. Hausner, Mr. Travis Gibb, back even though we butcher happy birthday. And Hockey, thanks so much for showing up. Wolverine, glad to have you in the house. And so Max, it's nice to see your face. Hey.
Hey, we also have a Phoenix too.
Excellent. Oh, Phoenix is here. Great. Hey, Phoenix Animation, what's going on? I got to ask you, what is your favorite genre, both to create and to consume? And you're muted.
Probably to create is fantasy, and I think my art just the way I work just sort of lends itself to that. Probably to consume as well. I can really get into the epics and stuff like that, and because obviously, because I find it like it's a strain for me to sort of read, and I'm attracted to the artwork first. Then that sort of work catches my eye immediately. So obviously someone like the people that I'm into, someone like Simon Bisley, or when I was a kid, I'd pick up any Frank Frazetta book that I could find, or until you could get the books that was just absolutely full of them. So yeah, it'd be fantasy all the way through.
So it seems like this is right up your alley for both creating and eventually for consuming, and you're right in your element working.
Yeah,
on Rokan.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I was always
going to say hi to Amanda B too. I just caught her in the chat. Thanks so much for showing up, Amanda.
Yeah.
I was always sort of worried about the because I had a big break from artwork for about almost a decade before I came back on board with it all. And then just as I started putting my stuff out, Ben got in contact with me with his story. So I was always I've always been a bit nervous about what I was going to start with or what was going to lend me artwork to, but the story's just perfect, And it wasn't just because of the genre; it's because of the. I feel like the subtlety of the writing goes with my over the top sort of exaggerated style.
So, Ben, there's something very special about telling stories through sequential art. Now, Max said he's a big film fan. Why did you decide to tell Rokan as a story through the comic book medium rather than through, I don't know, literature or the film medium?
Well, I first started writing Rokan as a novel, but I think it's going to work a lot better as a comic book. I mean, Max was talking before about novels versus movies and the pros and cons, and this is something that I've thought about a lot and something that I've talked to Max at some length about. And I really think that the comic book or the graphic novel is the perfect balance between the two, really. Like if you read a story, if you read a novel, and this is the same reason why a lot of people prefer reading novels, but what happens when you read a novel is that you're involved so much visually in creating the novel. Two people can read the same novel and have come away with vastly different impressions of what these characters look like and what the world looks like, and neither of them is wrong, because to write a novel, you have to give a certain amount of detail to make the story go cohesive, but too much detail just makes a novel unreadable. So there really is a lot of room for interpretation from the reader to imagine. On the other hand, when you have movies, all of that imaginative creativity is taken away from the consumer, and the director and the producers decide for you what everything should look like, and even the emotional response that you're meant to have at certain moments. And that's fine too, and that creates we all are familiar with how powerful the movie going experience is, and that's obviously on purpose, and that's a good thing. But what's special about comic books, I think, is that it's a more shared thing with other people. Because like when you're watching a movie, you're kind of enthralled with it, and whoever you happen to be with at the moment watching the movie with, that's who you share the experience with. Or when you read a novel, it's way, way, way too personal. No one shares that experience with you when you read a novel. But a comic
There's something about sitting in the dark with a bunch of strangers all sharing the same experience, and you have no idea who they are, but you're all feeling the same emotions, and you're all keyed into the same vibration, the same wave. And there's something spectacular about it.
It is a spectacular experience.
There's a really interesting point you just made there, though, about how a novel's a very personal experience. You can't, but versus a movie, you can have a crowd sit and watch it. I think comics definitely have a little bit more in common with a book, but you can have a couple people sit around a comic and read it together,
and they all notice different things inside the art too, and they all point out different aspects of the experience.
Yeah, but here's what's so special about the comic book shared experience is that you read an issue, and then 2 months or whatever it is later, you read the next issue. And so for a long period of time, because as you said, that movie watching shared experience is something spectacular and marvelous, but it's over with after the movie's over, you know. And then, yeah, there's fandom and everything like that, but you're not really continued to be invested in the same story. But when you read a serialized comic book, then you are. And then everyone that's reading that same comic book is along for the ride as well at the same time.
That is
that you
probably
are.
the most insightful perspective on this question I have ever heard. Usually people like to talk about, you know, that the in-depth experience of watching a movie, or the fact that movies require budgets and comic books is just your imagination. But that last part, where your connection to a syndicated comic book series brings everyone together in anticipation of the next issue coming out, and all of the buzz and the hype around that, keeping the fervor alive. That's a very good connection, and really contrasts the difference between something like a visual experience in a film and a visual experience in a comic.
I mean, I talk crap about movies a lot, and people think I'm crazy, but it's really not my favorite way to receive a story. It's over too quickly, you know. And I you know, so I've thought about this a lot, and comic books by far and away are the greatest experience for me as a consumer compared to any other medium. And that's why I want to make Rokan in that way.
So, Max, you said before you took a break from drawing and art. Does that mean you've got previous experience working in comics?
I've done bits and bobs for people here and there. So I have a really sort of weird past with that. So I was always into art as a kid. I was always the kid that drew in class. And then I went to university and studied graphic design, and then I was a designer for about 7 years. And then when you do that work, if you want to be half decent at it, you're there late. So the last thing you want to do when you get home is work on your own stuff.
Gotcha.
And then I came out of that industry, and ended up working in the art repair industry for much longer. And then lockdown. So I fiddled during this time, you know, I fiddled with it, but I didn't sort of really push my work. And then it was only really about 4 years ago that when the indie scene started coming back on board, that I decided that I'm gonna get on this, and I'm gonna crack on with it. But the problem with that is that unless you've been doing it, you know, successfully, your skill set is nowhere near what you think it is. And the sort of work I wanted to make, you know, my skill just wasn't up to standard. So it took me a further sort of 3 to 4 years to get up to a certain standard. And then just when that happened, lockdown happened, then I lost my job. And then a week later, Ben messaged me, and here we are. So everything's kind of just happened. Like, but it's just about improving as an artist, and you've got to consistently want to improve. And if that's the case, then you've got to keep analysing your work. I think I'm the sort of artist that just never is really satisfied with anything I do, to be honest.
So did you have anything previously published?
I did an indie comic book in 2019 with another group of guys.
Because I looked up Ben, and I didn't look up you, and now I'm kind of kicking myself because I love doing my research and like grabbing some stills from your old book or something. And you know,
thank you, Travis.
What did Travis say?
Tell me I was looking good.
There's not that much out there apart from the stuff that I put out there.
Travis, if he was using that, you wouldn't be able to know. You know that doesn't work on camera.
And I'm a Brujah anyway,
It's true.
so I don't actually.
It's the presence. He's using presence.
There you go.
Sorry, guys. Just we're nerding out.
Yeah, if you want to look up my stuff, I'd just go on my Max Headroom Instagram. There's a bunch of work on there. That's about it, really. Most of the work that I did commercially was graphic design for a long time. You know.
What about you, Ben?
So the thing is,
how did you get your start?
The thing is that Max and I were both really caught up in other jobs and other preoccupations for our lives until we found each other and began doing this project together. So yeah, I mean we're both of us much older than we look, but for some reason it wasn't until now. I think we're just both late bloomers because I mean Max was going on about how he's still getting better and this and that, but I think you're really hard on yourself, Max. Everyone else sees your work and is blown away, love at first sight. So
Oh, nice.
sorry, that wasn't
that's
really
great.
answering your question, but how did what was the question exactly? How did I get
I'm gonna
into
go
this?
full on
Why
this
am I
real quick.
doing this?
The question was going to be, how did you get your start? Real quick before we do that, I want to say hello to Anthony Figaro in the chat, Darren Wagoner, and COVID Kev moseying on in right before the halfway point. These are some really great pieces of illustration. That's Swamp Thing and Jason.
Yeah.
Is that what that is? That's awesome.
Yeah.
Just
a bit of inking. Some old
So a natural mashup, right?
Yeah, that is a fun mashup.
Battle
I
for
guess,
the Lake.
I guess, yeah, like Jason's dumping bodies, and so
I
there's
like to
definitely a
think of it-
story
Yeah.
there to be told.
Yeah.
That Jason's using his machete in a more traditional way.
Oh, to
Yeah.
get through the swamp, and then Swamp Thing's not having it because
Right.
he's shrekking out. Get out of my swamp.
That's the
so
story
I was asking,
that I
was
immediately
asking you.
imagined.
Oh yeah, I could definitely see that. We could spitball something.
We'll make an
and,
ash can
tell
of
a
that
story.
one day.
Yeah, I'm down. Just have them throw something together real quick. So how did you get your start, and why did you decide to do Rokan now? What's prompted this?
Well, there's two ways to answer that question. The simple answer is because I've always been too busy doing other things. The more the more to the point answer is I got really sick in 2019. Like, I don't want to sound like melodramatic or be a downer or anything, but honestly, I was close to dying with pneumonia. And so when I was recovering from the pneumonia, I just really had a long talk in the mirror. Like, what have I done? What am I doing? Like, I'm a teacher and that's great, but I want to leave something behind that matters and that really means something. And so no more putting it off, no more prioritizing other things. I want to be a writer. I want to make this book. I'm doing it starting tomorrow and forget everything else. So I quit my job. I came to South America. I'm, living like a king, but on relatively low income if I were to spend my dollars somewhere else, working online. And I've just been writing, making contacts, figuring this thing out, and moving it along.
Frequency Girl could probably relate. She was a teacher a while back before we moved, and that's definitely been a transition. But you wanted to stop touching children's lives and start making comics that will touch children's lives later on. Don't give me that look. I know phrasing. I know. Okay.
Touching children's
lives. I got a little nervous there.
I'm really glad you that sentence finished the way it did because I didn't like the way it started.
So,
but yeah, being a teacher, being a teacher takes up entirely too much of a person's time and existence, especially if, like us, like Frequency Girl and myself, we take it really seriously and try to be the best teachers that we can because there's so many other things that go into it,
Oh yeah.
Because you're mentoring, you're concerned, you're interested in the students' personal lives and hobbies, so you show up to watch them play sports and things like that. And so, it's just impossible to be a great teacher and to do something else significant.
And to do anything
because there's only 24 hours in a day. Yeah.
Yep. I'd be spent by the time I got home. I was done. I had no energy left for anything other than teaching.
And I can't imagine doing a comic book or even trying to have the energy to have creative genesis at that point. You used to drag yourself in the front door, and that was awful. So you said Rokan is going to be an ongoing series. So I guess you're not going to be going back to teaching anytime soon.
Ever.
And Max, you're going to be pushing the art on this series? Like, I guess the plan is for the two of you to continue creating together, because this looks like a really good dynamic pairing. Are you down to do the whole series work? And do you have another gig or other gigs that you're combining with that, or do you have a professional career?
Yeah, man, I'm staying on board. We're going to push through it. Yeah, I do artwork for other people as well, for cash. I do commission work and stuff.
Yeah, commissions, cover commissions, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've had a few come through since. It's really weird the way everything's happened, really. As soon as the some of the artwork got out for Rokan, I got like a bunch of people hitting me up asking me to.
Come on, that's obvious. Like, I know you got your Instagram out there, and I know people are going to see your Instagram. But the moment you advertise that you're involved in a commercial endeavor, creating artwork for money, and then you show what that artwork is on the campaign, people are going to be like, yo, do me a cover, bro. Look at that turtle.
I also think 2020 has been a year where everybody has been reassessing priorities. Yep. Kind of like how you were talking about how you had a moment where you had to like say, what am I doing with my life? I think a lot of people had time in 2020 to say, hey, if I'm ever going to do something creative with myself, it's now. So I think a lot of people are reaching out to artists or starting up things. It's been great.
So why don't you guys tell us a little about Rokan directly? You've both been fairly cryptic, detailing the world and the setting. You've been leaking out little bits of details here and there on the streams that you've been on. What can you tell us about the world this book is set in? Neither one of you wants to go first. Ben, this is on you, man.
Yeah,
this is on you because you wrote the thing.
This is up to me. Yeah. Well, the world where Rokan comes from is not the world that we live in. It's a different world, but it's close by. If you think of the multiverse, this is a neighboring world where there's a lot of things in common with our world, but it isn't our world. And so I always say the same thing, so I want to say something different, because I always say the thing about the older brother God and the younger brother God. I think everyone's heard that by now.
In most of the illustrations, there are these two planets or maybe two suns portrayed fairly consistently. Are we in like a traditional solar system? I mean, this is obviously another world. Does it have other satellites? Like, let's get into the cosmology of this. Let's get down into the DNA of the universe that you're creating. Because like you said, it's not our world. And
before we do that, I'm going to give you guys a chance to think about that a little bit while just give me the short elevator pitch. If you just met me and you're making a book, what would you tell me Rokan is about?
And before we do that, let's just say real quick hello to Tier 1 Comics. I missed them earlier in the chat. That's your is that your imprint?
Yes, that's our guy. He's the guy that's we probably shouldn't do his navel. That's my boy. You there, Ben?
I'm afraid I missed a little bit of what you just said because my internet was
elevator pitch.
Oh yeah, so I wanted to give you guys extra time.
And whenever it rains, I get that.
Yeah. No. So I wanted to give you guys extra time to think about what Aaron's difficult question about cosmology. If you were going to give me just a short elevator pitch that explained what your book was about, just to give me like that initial taste, what does that pitch look like?
All right. So, okay. You need to. All right. So the point about Rokan is that people always feel like they're torn between two different worlds. Because when you really love something and when you really understand it, you're also kind of critical of it and you analyze it from a different point of view. I think I'm getting too esoteric. But basically, Rokan is a man of two worlds. He's a Steppenwolf. And I want this book to resonate with people that can identify with what that feels like when you're wanting to incorporate things that you learn into your identity, but at the same time, you're not just going to surrender entirely who you are. So Rokan is he's the wizard and the warrior combined. He's the ultimate hybrid of two opposites, and not just this, but there's so many layers to that as well, because the character of Rokan is that way. The story of Rokan is him experiencing these two different worlds, learning to be a wizard and then learning to be a warrior and then learning to be both. But
I can tell you my
also,
insight based entirely upon the Thucydides quote at the beginning of the lengthier description, because that thing encapsulates the entirety of the story. Rokan is an individual who has the talents of both, and he doesn't want to be forced to choose one or the other. So in rebelling against this caste system style order, he's an outcast, but he's also got the greatest potential of either of them, because a society that limits its people to have, it's fighting done by cowards and it's thinking done by fools is destined to be destroyed. So from a reader's point of view, as we're following this main character, our reaction to this is accepting and understanding the society, and it's a critical perspective on the dynamic between these two through the explorations of Rokan. Yeah, well,
I think Aaron put it better than as well as I ever have myself. And I would just add to that what I would hope is that anyone that reads this book can identify with that same dilemma and apply it to their own lives. And I think that there's an infinite amount of situations where that could come into play. Like, for example, in my own experience, like, I was hesitant for a long time to try martial arts because I didn't think that I belonged in that world. And it was a massive mistake, because I love doing martial arts now, and I couldn't imagine my life without it. And I'm 33, so I'm really late to this world. But I should have done it 10 years ago, or if not 20. An artist friend of mine, relates that he has the same experience, like being in the military, and he loves being in the military, but at the same time, he's the kind of guy that listens to like death metal and likes to paint his fingernails black and things like that. And he would never give up either of those worlds. He loves both of those worlds. And he argues that he's a better soldier for being a metalhead and vice versa. And I believe him. And one more example, a friend of mine is a Kogi Indian here in Colombia. And he really likes Christianity, and he's done a lot of research on religions and met a lot of people, and he decided he wanted to be a Christian, and he is a Christian. And at the same time, he hasn't given up his Kogi culture. He dresses in a traditional Kogi way, and he speaks the Kogi language. And so it's been difficult for him, because a lot of some, not all, but some Christians are like, well, you have to stop dressing that way. And he's like, well, actually, no, I don't, and I never will. And some of his people from his tribe are like, well, you can't be a Christian and also be part of our tribe. And he's like, well, actually, yeah, I can. I can do whatever I want. And he's right, So these are all
rather than being
examples of Rokan's real life.
Choosing to be a part of that world without giving up the other part of yourself. And I can sense that there's a good deal of you in that story, given what you were saying about being a teacher and then choosing to sort of walk away from that, because a teacher is sometimes for people less of a job and more of a calling. It's more of a who you are. And so rather than giving up the artist within, you're embracing this other thing and teaching in a different way. I want to ask Max,
exactly,
what is it about this story that spoke to you and got you involved? Like, why did you decide to do this? You could be drawing anything.
Okay,
Clearly, you could be drawing anything.
So apart from the genre that we already discussed, it's like you say, the fundamental philosophy of what Ben's sort of written into the story kind of applies to everyone in one way or another. Ben always describes like he was the bookworm that went into sort of physical martial arts later and then realized, I can do both of these. And mine was the opposite of that. I was kind of like, because I was dyslexic and it's very hard for me to sort of read and write. Earlier on, I've always been very physical, and I was a Thai boxer for a long time. And then that sort of duality with going home and then drawing comic books was always something that the people I trained with sort of never really got their head round. But also, the duality in the book itself is, if you have these sort of subtle philosophies and premises and things that you want to think about in art, you want some badass art to go with it to emphasize it. The complete opposite of that. So the first issue of Rokan is how this young wizard sort of finds himself having a penchant for violence. So there's a scene in it where he dispatches some people, and that's going to be a scene that's very hardcore, impactful, heavy metal style violence. And I applied that same aesthetic to the world building as well. So where Ben's sort of approach to the writing is kind of intricate and has a lot of messages, I wanted the art to be almost opposite in the way that it's quite blunt and it just punches you in the face.
Visceral. Right.
Yeah. No, I mean that's a great way to portray something so primal as rejecting being who people tell you are. Like realizing you can be more than what people tell you you're limited to be. And that's such a core, like you said, like primal, visceral element of it, that the art lends itself to experiencing that. We did have someone just hop in the chat before, and now I scrolled past him. Oh, it was Captain Ansus. I think that's how you say that. I just want to say that's a great name, by the way, and thanks for coming and hanging out with us, as well as Jake Twister, a friendly face on the channel. Glad to have you, my friend. Hope you're enjoying yourself. So where were we?
So that was a nice change, because we were originally talking about the cosmology of this world. Yeah,
and I mean, we kind of just jumped off of that rather than getting in and spoiling anything. I mean, I have plenty of other questions.
So then I'll actually...
I want to know the writer's two sons.
Yeah, so we've kind of learned a little bit about the foundation of where the book came from. It's dealing with, our characters dealing with duality and what that means, what the struggles are. But you set it in this world that's visceral and primal, so that it's got kind of a mass appeal to sneak in that kind of like more philosophical question.
El Joe Catapano, how's it going? Speaking of martial artists,
tell us a little bit about this kind of fantasy world you've created. What were you thinking about? What was inspiring you? Obviously, art wise, we have some like 70s art, some heavy metal.
Yeah.
I can see a lot of those influences.
The Wizards is obvious. The heavy metal.
The best way to understand
2000 AD. That's perfect.
You tell us about the world you wanted to create.
All of that.
Is that to me or
the best way to understand it is to compare it with what it isn't. Like there's obviously a lot of influences, like the Lord of the Rings and A Song of Ice and Fire, but we definitely don't want it to be we didn't create that kind of world. Despite all the animals and magic and stuff, those worlds are tame in a way, meaning that they're a little bit realistic, like realistic in like the literary sense. When you read those stories, there's an element of realism, even though obviously there's incredible happenings. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I'll give you what I'm trying to say is like what Max was saying about that visceral, heavy metal violence. That's the kind of world that this is. Like what you read, like like the
That's
outback.
what you pick up.
Savage,
You
exactly.
pick up on that in the art. You see it's savage. It's a unyielding place that hasn't quite been conquered by man. You did mention that there's technology,
and
but
not
it seems
only
that
is
there's
it
sorcery and you know less
and not only
civilization.
That absolutely. This is a world that's governed by magic and monsters and demons and gods, and to make technological advances and to organize societies in any way is like putting like a very weak cover on a pot that could boil over at any time, you know. So we have these wizards and we have these soldiers, and they're very dedicated to what they're doing. But in a sense, I think Max does a really good job of this with the creatures that he designs. But we almost want to have like a Lovecraftian undertone that this could all go tits up at any point, because there's all kinds of unseen and not understood forces at play.
So you wanted to create a world that felt like it was of an era of myth, where maps and answers about
Hilary,
answers about the way the civilization works are irrelevant. This is a place of saga and myth and oratory, right?
What's really boring about the world that we live in, the planet Earth in our day and age, is that we've sort of mastered it all.
Click on one of the links, D-Wag. Go to the damn campaign. You haven't seen... You're smoking too much crack, my friend. Please continue.
Yeah, so in the reality, we've mastered the world, and we've mastered civilization, and that's quite boring. So I want to have a world that's still full of danger and still full of mystery. This is the kind of world that exists on one of those maps, one of those old-timey maps where there's sea monsters drawn in the margins, and it says, here be monsters, because you don't know what's beyond that point. The home country is this peninsula that is landlocked, and there's a fortress that I'll admit was somewhat based on the wall from A Song of Ice and Fire that separates it from the rest of the world. And there's these jutting out stones and magic enchantments that will cause any boats to crash against the shores there, against the rocks. So it's an impossible place to reach. And so the whole premise of this country is that we're finally taming this world. We've figured out magic, we've figured out technology, we've figured out warfare, and we have this one country where things are safe and we're in control. And Rokan's about to...
I'm gonna cut you off. That's perfect for the juxtaposition within the setting. People who are at odds against nature, who are at odds against the world around them, they fall into roles because it gives them a sense of stability.
Exactly.
If I am a this, then if I do this and everyone else does their that, we will survive together against these overwhelming odds. So if you are creating a city or a community and you're pulling together and everyone stays in their lane, then you've got a shot. Rokan is dangerous, and that's because he won't stay in his lane. He's more than just that lane, but they have to get rid of him rather than embracing the fact that his way of doing things could transcend this model and send them even more forward. And it's because of that blindness that you have the conflict.
You got it. That's exactly what it is. Because on Ramos, everyone has to fulfill their role. Everyone has to stay in their lane, as you said, and live out the role that they have. I'm a warrior. I'm a mason. I'm a wizard. I'm, whatever it is. But the world outside of Ramos... Any change
to that upsets the whole equilibrium.
Accepts the whole equilibrium. And the world outside of Ramos, compared to them, is very chaotic. There's a lot of, crime. There's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of instability. And so Rokan is a problem because he's disrupting the balance. But really, he's transcending it. And so the macro conflict is that they see him as a disruptor when in reality he's their savior, and it takes them a long time to figure that out.
Well, he's got to go on his journey. He's got to conquer himself and the world outside the city to blaze a trail for the people inside the city to realize they're more than where they are than just the walls that they've built. Yeah. So Max,
so he has to be
all
in exile first.
Yeah.
Before he can
exactly. Well, I mean, that's the hero's journey. You know, like that's part of the hero's journey. So he has to walk his own path and leave behind the world he knows. It's part of the call to adventure. The world, like you said, outside the world is very dangerous, and you populated it with some very savage creatures that, and you know, and a fantastical setting. Max, what was the best part about drawing all this crazy flora and fauna? I will go back once again to the cosmic turtle, which is stunning. Where did all of that come from inside of you? I know you've got the heavy metal background and everything, but what was the most fun about doing it, and where did it come from?
Where did it come from? I don't know. I've always been like this with my art. I just have, and I'll get hold of a concept and I'll instantly have like a visual aesthetical feel for it. It sounds weird when I try and sort of explain how I think when I think about making these things. So like for Rokan, I just had like in my head, every panel looked red. The first thing I knew was every red had to be a prominent color in the book. And I don't know if that was because of any influences that I've got. I know Conan the Barbarian's in my head. When I'm
absolutely,
when I'm painting this, not the comic, the Arnold Schwarzenegger film specifically, right? And I went after
the Thulsa Doom one, early, like the first one,
that's it, not the Destroyer.
Oh wait, come on, that was fun. It was fun.
Yeah, there are choice moments, but I can agree to let's forget that mostly.
It's a fun film, but I'm not basing any IPs that I'm making on it.
That is fair.
But I had it in my head because there's quite a southern feeling to that film, because there's not really a lot of dialogue in the first sort of hour, is there? And I went through it and I was trying to find the scene because I couldn't think of the scene that I was envisioning that had all this red in. But I think it's the scene where Conan's dead and then the spirits come and get him in the desert.
That's exactly where I went to, and the dude is chanting. You created this like esoteric, not well defined, because they never explain how Conan gets resurrected. The wizard, when he does it, it's like you don't need to know that. What you need to see is this strange ritual, because for Conan, he doesn't know it either. So it's we're going on the journey with Conan.
Language.
We don't need to see it from this omniscient perspective, which I guess is why you guys are also not really going into too much depth about the thing world, because it is supposed to be a mystery.
So that's a mystery. Go ahead, finish, Max, and then I'll.
That was the exact feel that I wanted for the panel where they're trekking through the desert. That's the exact feel that I wanted. That you didn't really know what was going on, but you can see that it's harsh, you know.
So Rokan is one of this society of wizards, and they've built their religion around their mastery of magic, and so they think they understand how magic works, and they've got it all cataloged and organized, and they dress certain ways, and they use certain items depending on what magic abilities they've mastered. And what we'll soon find out as we get into issues 2, 3, etc. of Rokan is that it's not able to be categorized that way, because Rokan will start to realize, and this is inspired somewhat by Spawn, because like when Spawn first is comes
Figuring
about,
out
he
the
doesn't
suit.
understand his powers, right? A lot of that's because Seth MacFarlane didn't really define them all the way, but it makes for a fun element with Spawn, and Rokan will start to realize that he can use magic in different ways, and it isn't quite as cookie cutter according to the way that he's taught that it was. So yeah, the whole thing is supposed to be mysterious and in a way frightening, because there's things that will happen that shouldn't be able to happen, but there's a reason for them. So it's mysterious, and it's everything that you said, esoteric, and well, basically what I'm trying to say.
Arcane, recondite, abstruse, writer's
I have
words.
this talent. I have this talent for saying things in the most roundabout way instead of directly. But what I'm trying to say is that you can't really keep the genie in the bottle, and that's what Rokan finds out.
No, it really sounds like the whole book is about being told to know your role, not wanting to accept that, knowing you're more than just your role, but having to endure a perilous journey in order to find who you are and then return this conquering hero to the society that rejected you in order to save them. Rather than revenge upon them in order to save them. And I'm excited for that journey.
This might be a question you have later, so I apologize.
That's
if you,
all right.
I mean, get to it. But, one of the toughest things about making comics that Aaron and I have learned is that when, I'm knee deep in art and he's knee deep in the words, sometimes we need a third pair of eyes to look at what we're doing and keep us on track. I can imagine that if you have this amazing talent for, explaining things in a roundabout way, an editor probably would really help.
So you just jumped 9 questions.
Sorry. I saw the lead. It was perfect.
You can't keep the genie in the bottle. Sorry,
Yeah, exactly.
Aaron. Interviews are a fluid thing. The
That's
questions
all right,
don't always
man.
go in the
I'm with
order
it.
that you
I'm
write
with
them.
it.
So what did you guys do to help get an extra set of eyes to keep you on track? Did you have an editor, or did you have some, reliable people that you went to? What was your process?
Well, I mean, we are working along with my boy Del from Tier 1 Comics, but that's more just as far as publishing under that imprint, because we think we'll have a lot of the same readers. His book, The Mortal Asadi, and my book, Rokan, I have a feeling that a lot of people who are into one of those books are going to be into the other. But as far as editors, I don't know what to tell you, man. But the same way that Max paints and does all his own colors and all his own lines, I do all my own macro editing and micro editing. I mean, like, I almost feel like I'm two different people depending on which kind of writing I'm doing on any given day, whether it's just, going page by page, moving the story forward, or whether it's coming back and looking at it a month later or a week later and realizing how things ought to go and how things really ought to be. But I'm very protective of the story, and I haven't shared very much of it with anyone other than Del and Max. But
I will pull it out of you.
I like my own ideas, and so I like my own changes, and I like my own choice of words. So I haven't felt the need for an editor, to be honest.
Max, how about yourself? Have you gone to anybody with any of the art to kind of like, hey, give me a fresh set of eyes on these?
Yeah, I always ask people, man, because I hate my own artwork. I'm always utterly dissatisfied with anything I produce.
Is that why you spill coffee on it?
Yeah, man, because it pissed me off. Nah, man. Did he tell you about that, did he? Christ, that broke my heart. I got it done quicker, though, the second time. Probably because I had it burnt into my brain. Incidentally, somebody asked if Dal does my inks. No one does my inks, man. I do all my own inks. And
I don't know if you caught it earlier, but in the chat, Joe Catapano said that this book it sells itself on its color alone.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very often that I will come across a piece of art, even full page and 2-page spreads, that I just keep going back to stare at. This turtle is that piece.
That's the power of acrylics, man.
Yeah, man, it's so good.
It's the power of hand painting stuff. That's why I used to I mean, I still do now. Like 20 odd years later, I still pick up a copy of Slain the Horned God by Simon Bisley, and I just flick through some of the pages and just stare at the art, because the acrylics on it they just capture some form of energy that.
I love the saturation, like the way that the color is so bright, and the contrast here is great. Garrett and I were just looking at some of the other art earlier, talking about the contrast work and the way that you do your saturated colors.
I'm very glad to hear that it's affected you that way. It makes me happy. It's music to my ears.
Joe Catapano gave you very high praise. He says it blew him away. It's one of the other books. It looks more vibrant and mysterious than Star Circuit. My mind's blown. Really, that's huge praise. His campaign is
really incredible. Appreciate that.
I'm looking forward to the fact that I have these two awesome books in totally different genres.
Yeah.
So I get to feed these sides of me. Like, one is wonderful cyberpunk, future dystopian, like that gets my juices going, and the other's like Conan and magic and heavy metal magazine, and I get to enjoy that too. It's a wonderful thing to see, because I don't get that type of variety from the mainstream. This is only happening out here in indies. That's going to lead me into saying it's time we look at the campaign briefly. I know a lot of people don't love going into, like, we've all seen the campaign on other shows.
Actually, I'm going to stop him right there.
All right, go ahead.
I have one other question for Max, actually. I listen to a lot of music.
What's your playlist?
While I'm working on stuff. I'm dying to know what kind of music you're listening to while you're working on this.
Black Sabbath.
Nice.
Right on.
What about you, Ben? Do you listen to anything while you write or while you contemplate?
I do. Yeah, I really like to listen to progressive rock when I'm imagining the world of Rokan and when I'm putting words down. Bands like Genesis and Focus and Yes are the what I like to listen to.
There's when I was looking at it, I was getting some heavy vibes of like doom metal, sludge metal, things like that, stoner metal.
Nice. There's stuff Garrett paints.
Yeah,
when he paints, he listens to that.
Well, there's also there's the band Sleep. They have an album called Dope Smoker that's like, I think it's 2 tracks and it's like an hour long.
Back.
Oh yeah, I had the new album, the Tall album as well, while I was knocking out that turtle. To be fair.
Oh, right on.
38-hour tracks.
Yeah, exactly.
Going on forever and ever.
There's also one of the guys from Sleep went on to get into a band called High on Fire.
I love that band.
And they have a music video for the song "The Black Plot" that absolutely reminded me of this. It's like this green-skinned barbarian warrior who gets killed in battle fighting against like weird Cthulhuoid monsters, and goes on like a vision quest before like he is reincarnated and kills the Lich King. It's a wild video.
Yeah, you two
The Black Plot, High on Fire. Check it out.
I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah.
Nice one.
So I'm going to bring us back over to the campaign real quick, because I do want to go through the tiers, let everyone know what's up. Let's play the trailer while we're loading up here.
Cool.
In collaboration with Tier 1 Comics, an all-new creative team brings the epic fantasy adventure of Rokan to life, combining high fantasy and heavy metal artistic styles and sensibilities with the action-packed, fun world of superhero comic books. Rokan is part fantasy, part superhero, and all metal.
That's cool. That's very, very cool.
Gives me goosebumps every time.
I like that sound effect, that sound effect at the end. That's good. Where'd you find that?
I just searched for sword swishes on YouTube.
Sword swishies. That's awesome. Yeah, that's great.
Google food.
Gotta be honest.
Bring me what I need.
So you guys have I can't read, $3,000 fixed goal?
Yes.
I'm sorry, flexible goal.
Oh, flexible goal. Yeah, sorry.
So, okay, here's my question. Why did you pick $3,000 flexible?
Well, I calculated how much I would need to pay Max just for his art, after subtracting what I've already paid him, and that's about how much it was. And I'm willing to foot the bill for everything else if necessary. But I think that we'll have far more than 3,000 by the time we're ready for fulfillment. So
I get that. It makes
Yeah,
sense to me.
it's
It's gonna. I like the fact that it's flexible. That means, I mean, I'm weird. I know not everybody thinks the way that I do, but when I see someone with a flexible goal, I think this dude's putting out his book no matter what. I don't think he's going to take my money and run away. But that's also because I haven't been burned like other people have by crowdfunding. So when I see a flexible goal, I'm like, this dude just wants to do his project.
There's mixed opinions out there on it. We definitely just want to get the project. The project's coming out regardless. It's getting done.
And if it doesn't, like you said, Ben, you have to foot the bill for some of it in the first book. It'll make its money back the second, the third, the fourth. The more people read it and talk about it, more that your story blows them away, paired up, with Max's art, and it's a real experience. The more people will come in on issue 2 and issue 3. I don't know how many issues the story is planned to unfold. Have you figured that out yet?
More or less. I mean, I know the macro plot points for the entire story, and I know how many different arcs there are going to be involved in that. But let's just say we have concrete story enough for 15 issues to come, and if we're still working together when those 15 issues are out, I've got many years worth of story that we can cover.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. Maybe we answered this already. Yeah. Well, how many pages are the books?
20 something.
24.
So classic floppy size.
And that's dimensions too. So that's the other thing that I was going to talk about. I noticed in your tiers that you've got a $3,000 goal and $12 issues. And it is hard for a first timer out the gate to hit a goal like 3K coming from like a basically unknown place with a 28-page book that is that price point. At the same time, you're hitting the right price to page ratio. You don't want to go above 12 because then you're going out of the realm of sensible pricing. So that was why I was like, why 3K? Because 3K for what you're selling the book at is a mighty reach for people who have really no footprint or presence. And you know what? I'm not saying that to put you down at all. We don't either. You know what I mean? Like, we're not judging you.
Yeah, I understand. No, that's fine. That's totally within bounds to say that, and it's true. But the thing is, like we keep reiterating this. If we had to fund this book out of pocket to get the first issue out there, we would, because we're very confident that once we have a reputation that we do fulfill, that you're not, if you invest in backing our project, you are going to get a book. Once people know that, and once they've seen the book, I think they're going to be so blown away by it that I'm massively confident that the second issue is going to have a big following. We've got, and the campaign hasn't done poorly by any means, but even it's been pushing a rock up a hill to get attention and to get backing for this first issue. And I'm supremely confident that every subsequent issue will be a walk in the park, because we'll just get a reputation for being reliable, and the story.
Like, yeah.
and
Yeah,
the art
I'll
speaks
say
for
it'll
itself.
be a less steep hill.
Yeah.
It'll be a less steep hill.
Listen to
Yeah, you're right.
Frog G is
Froggy.
saying back this one. If you're unsure, back it anyway. It has some great art. Also,
Hell yeah.
it's $12.
$10.
Like this is going to be a number one. You're going to want to have the number one if you can back physical. That'd be
It's $10
preferable.
for this
Sorry,
standard.
it's $10 for the standard.
Mhm.
I don't know why 12 keeps sticking in my head.
Because you said you
at
shouldn't
24
do more
pages,
than
you want
12.
50 cents a
Doesn't matter.
page.
Right. Funny way to look at it. So I'm a big like miniature painter. I'm into like war games. I grew up on Games Workshop stuff. Their White Dwarf magazine is like $10 a month now, I think. So like you get $10 for a shitty hobby magazine that you're gonna buy anyways. Yeah, put that money towards a book like this instead.
Yeah, and the other, I mean, like if you look at modern comics,
Yeah.
they advertise being 24 pages. We've really got 6 pages of ads in there,
Yeah.
And they're $5 plus. And for indie, it is more of a boutique industry for comic books.
Yeah.
People are willing to put out a little bit more money to have a really great special, limited printing of a fun product rather than the mass-produced stuff in the mainstream. So
Speaking of
don't
which,
make your price points compared to them.
so these issues as they're coming out, I'm guessing are going to be
That's right.
Saddle Stitch, right?
Probably.
Have you decided on that yet, or?
Sorry,
You know
again?
what?
Oh,
He said if we're gonna do Saddle Stitch. You know what?
Alright.
I'll be honest with you. This is the first book we've made, but we're working with Dell. He's made his book already, so we're just gonna do what he did.
no,
To be
absolutely.
completely honest with you,
I was just thinking like 24 pages. I don't think you.
No, that's a
that-
good size for
Yeah.
saddles.
Yeah, you
don't
can't-
want to go bigger than that.
You can't really do perfect
If it's
binding on that.
if it's saddles, if it's over 24, if it's like 30, it's too hard to close. It's too floppy and it's too small, too low page count for perfect binding. Maybe they'll do a trade.
Yeah,
I would love to see this in trade form with a beautiful gloss cover.
that's
and-
kind of where I was heading. Was you said you have at least 15 issues planned
Yeah.
out? What issue would you feel comfortable putting a compilation
He's
together?
probably got arcs.
Yeah.
He's probably got like at the at the
Let him
3.
answer.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, the first arc is kind of compiled of 2 arcs that are going to take 4 to 5 issues each. So I think once we have 10, maybe 10 issues would be a trade paperback.
All right, that's gonna be a hefty book.
Nice.
Yeah, 10. That's like 240 pages.
That'd be nice and thick.
Very, very
Nice big epic.
Yeah.
I'm not sure because I'm not sure whether to split it up into 2 or to have it as.
I would go
as
with
one,
5
because-
issues
because
just to
th-
see if
those
you can
are-
do a collected 5-issue volume, because you want to try your
Right.
hand at the printing of it just to get the experience of what it's like working with a perfect binding, what it is to order that,
Okay.
the pricing elements. And honestly, I think if you break it up into the and Rokan goes on his first adventure and meets the woman who's going to train him in his next part of his adventure, you can break it right there.
I
and
mean,
then
we're getting
release the
getting
issues.
ahead of ourselves
I'm
here.
sorry.
I want
Yeah.
to read this first book
I
first.
I go off to the races, man. My
No,
brain
but
just-
this is important for me to figure out, because there is one the entire origin story of Rokan will take about 10 issues to tell, but it's sort of split up into two arcs, like the first part and the second part that has a very clear end, each one. So yeah, I think 5-issue trade would make a lot of sense, and to do 2 of them.
Yeah. But personally, I think 5-issue trades are great. Another book that I think you guys have some kind of spiritual connection to, at least, even though it's very different, is Orkstain.
Yeah, for sure.
Orkstain is James Stocco is wildly different art, because it's very cartoony, kind of manga inspired, but it's got those like acidic heavy metal colors, right? And it takes place in this world that is just like weird and bizarre, and that you just love kind of like trying to find details about. And
something that I love about Max's work is that it has just enough of a tinge of cartooniness. Like, cartoony definitely is a spice on Max's rack.
I'll tell you, I think in comic books, I think people need to be, they should not be afraid of being a little bit more cartoony. I agree. Think if it's used well, it just amplifies what you're doing.
It's stylized.
You
want your look on it. You want stylized art. D-Wags says, just a suggestion, if you change the thumbnail photo at the top on the trailer video, change it to the camel picture, like these guys that we're looking at right now, the wizards. The thumbnail photo isn't doing it justice. Now, I am kind of inclined to agree with him. The one with his fists like this, holding the head and the face, it's a very cool image. And I think that's being used as one of the variant covers. But it's a cover promise that undersells itself so that when you open the book, you're blown away by the art. You are going to get what's on the cover, but the interiors of the book are just that much better. And that's a really cool dynamic. You don't want to oversell it with the cover promise. However, on the campaign page, you might want to change it to some of the interior art like that, because that's more of the promise of what we're actually going to get. I dropped my
Sure.
That's a tough
one.
Yeah.
What would you suggest?
That's a tough one, because I really like the image that we have, because it shows that this is a violent book, that this is an action-packed, gritty book, and that this is a superhero book.
Personally,
it's got the muscles and the blood. So
I like the thumb you're using. I think as a attention grabber, it's very good. You've got the beautiful negative space right above him with the black, which has like just beautiful contrast to grab the eye. Then as you scroll through, you start to see some of these kind of like beautiful pages with, the lavish
the head in the water with the beautiful like blue insert there to break up the panels. Okay, so let's take a look at like the last.
Yeah, I see it the same way Garrett does.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I always think negative space is something people need to think about more. It's actually funny because
it's a cool silhouette.
This goes right hand in hand with the theme of your book about the idea of the duality of things. There's a Japanese term called no-tan. Yeah. It's the relationship between positive and negative space, and how negative space defines positive shape. Yeah. And if you don't give them equal ground and think about them as hand in hand, you lose a lot of the impact of what you're trying to draw. So I think that, having this beautiful figure like you do with this, really strong kind of like silhouette at the top with Rokan, that beautiful graphic you did for the title, it works so well.
So we got Ichthus in the house. What is up? Total excellence. Glad to see you, my friend. Glad you're here. We were just talking about some excellent color work on the book Rokan.
Yeah.
So
she says they look phenomenal.
I mean, that's really like what I'm saying with what you're selling. It is a great cover, that image right there. Yeah. It does really stand out against a lot of the other covers that I've seen. And you're right about the black space in the background. Is there a lot of like open panorama work on the interior of the book? Do you have like mountains and sky, and like do you separate your figures? Because from what I've seen, the interiors are beautiful, but I want to know more. I only have 4 interior pages.
So at the bottom there's some unpainted inks. There we go. So that's like a giant map of the area.
There you go.
Oh yeah.
And it's sort of, and then
so he's got sky there.
Yeah, you can't quite tell correctly, but the map sort of bleeds into the sky of the desert, and then the desert bleeds back into what the desert looked
Oh
like.
no, I see it. I see it. It's brilliant.
Before it was a
I
desert
love the
and it
fact
was
that there's
underwater.
silhouettes too.
Yeah.
I love the fact that there's silhouettes because they're placed there because it's their journey and you're watching them move through the environment, but the panel's really about the environment. It's about the world.
Exactly, and you've
Yeah.
already seen them on a different page, you know.
And silhouettes just
they're
there to provide that like scope, you know, like the scale of the figures in that scope. That Garrett talks about scale and scope all the time. It's some of the most useful education that I've got on art.
It's one of the things
understanding scale and scope.
It's something that I always try to struggle with in my art is making sure that in our comic that I show things at very small scale and things at very extreme close up, and that I don't fall into the same sized, general size figures over and over again.
It's always a good rule of thumb if
you're so I'm gonna give up on that.
I'm sorry, man.
It's okay. The conversation's naturally progressing back to the topic that we really want to talk about, which is like the book, not the
campaign. It's always a good rule of thumb if you're doing sort of wide shots to try and put something in the bottom left or right or top corners. So if you look at a lot of mine, there's always some kind of creature watching them, and if you can turn that into a subplot into it like a mini subplot on the page, then by all means go for it. So
absolutely,
it's the bug in the bottom sort of right hand corner, and then at the bottom he's eating it. It's got nothing to do with the story.
That's compelling storytelling, though, right?
Yeah, that's visual storytelling.
It's when the artist lets you know things about this world that aren't explicitly said. Awesome.
It's like what you were talking about earlier with the dyslexia, Garrett. If a book is well written with the art, Garrett can read it without reading the words.
Yeah.
So when he can go through a book and turn to me and go, "I understand what happened," that means it's well told visually.
Yep.
Yes, and I think I'm the same way. That might be because of spending a long time as a young guy. Well, yeah, but spending a long time sort of avoiding words as a young kid when you find it difficult, you find your brain sort of figures out other ways of tying together a narrative through sort of imagery. I mean, isn't that the Marvel way of sort of doing their comics way back when? Is they would just panel everything out to tell a rough story and then put the bubble, then write the script afterwards.
Yeah, the dialogue should really enhance what we're looking at.
Absolutely.
As a audience, within a visual medium like a film, really we're drinking it in with our eyes. So that element of the storytelling is really where.
I mean, it really goes both ways. Because
yes, but you do have to draw the line and say, start here to feed this, so it can be symbiotic.
And when you have awesome action and things that are just like awesome to look at, you earn the right for your audience to read the words. And then suddenly you get to a page where you explain things and you just drink it up because you're like, yes, I want to know more about
this. That's balance within the comic book itself. You have that action and the expanse of the drawing and everything, and with less dialogue. And then you, like as you said, earn the real estate to have more dialogue, more exposition, explaining what's either coming later or the consequences of what we just saw.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Beta Ray Bill. After the fight, he has all that exposition kind of setting the stage of the consequences of what just happened and the reason we're about to go and get the rest of this. So, it's smart. Hey, Wolverine says, have a good one, boys. I got to go get ready for a regeneration cycle on Red Valkyrie. I actually was going to say that. Yeah.
Bye, Wolverine.
What about your stretch goals on this? On this campaign?
We've decided to do a stretch goal of 2 playing cards with Phoenix animation. So right now we're just
the metal ones,
tweaking those images a little bit so that they'll look better in a card format before we send them to him.
I gotta say, when it's
that stretch goal,
when it's part superhero, part fantasy, all metal, I'm like, you need metal in the campaign if you're going to do that. It's like it sells itself. As far as stretch goals, there isn't a whole lot of merch or like add-ons or anything else like that. It's a very simple, straightforward, streamlined campaign. And for your first one, that's probably really good. Are you going to add on any merch as we go? Can we get a Rokan t-shirt, please? You know?
Yeah, I have my own design for a Rokan t-shirt. Max has his. We'll either combine them or change our minds.
You can make both. Two, guys.
But we decided not to do those yet because like no one knows who Rokan is yet. But probably for the second book we'll do a t-shirt because by then people will like be more invested emotionally in the character.
One more.
It's like no one buys a band t-shirt when they haven't listened to the album, you know. Once they're fans, then they want a t-shirt.
That is true. Sometimes I hear their single and I look at their album art and then I buy their t-shirt and then I'm that guy at the concert.
I did. Oh god, this is probably back in like 2004. I saw a band called Vox at this place in Providence.
Never heard of them.
Yeah, no, I don't think I've ever heard of them either. I bought their album because I really actually enjoyed them, but before I saw them, they had a big t-shirt that in huge bold letters said Vox don't give a fuck about shit. And I was like, I want that. No, I don't know what this band's about, but I'm going to wear that shirt because it's obnoxious and I love it.
So I got one word for you. Patches.
Great idea.
Well, it doesn't come from me. It comes from Shay. And if you want to sell people on your add-ons and stuff, patches are the way to go. It's like a favorite within the
I love you too,
community. Darren. Yeah. He's decided you're one of his favorite people. That's good. Once Darren has decided, then you got your rep.
I'm the same way. I'm very strong about what I like and what I don't like, and once I make up my mind, that's what it is.
If you're gonna do stretch goals, I love the metal. We need to see like a metal cover next time, maybe. I would love a shirt. Patches are a great add-on for stretch goals if we hit certain milestones, either number of backers or the amount of money that's been spent. That's true, Amanda. Amanda, what is your preferred piece of swag? Stickers, magnets? What little thing that they can throw in would you like to see? Because we do want everyone to be happy. And while she answers, I will say, because it's getting up on that time, everyone, you should probably, after this, migrate over to the Red Valkyrie channel for Regen Cycle, because it's a fun time on Fridays. Everyone just kind of hangs out.
After you back Rokan.
After this stream, after you back Rokan, Amanda says, magnets are useful. Yes, and you can put them on the fridge. You're absolutely right.
Practical.
I like magnets.
It's actually something that we included in our campaign. So
we have a magnet.
We have a Only Death Can Save Us magnet from Les Leach up here.
I couldn't see it.
He's adorable. He's a little chibi guy. Look at this. Oh,
no, the wrong.
Can't see it. Wrong camera. Right. Yeah. All right. So, do you guys have any words of advice for young or new creators that might be getting into crowdfunding comics?
Quit your job, move to Colombia.
I agree.
That's some good advice.
Now it wants stickers. Nice.
Personally, I think stickers are better because you can do kind of fun things like bombing places and
really
put them on telephone poles and
that's what he was just saying is wants his guitar case, he wants to adorn it.
If somebody parks poorly in a parking lot, you can put it on their windshield.
That's generally like the three things. It's stickers, magnets, patches, and you have like the assortment. And then it's trading cards or bookmarks or the collectible cards, with the stats and stuff on the back.
Yeah, we'll do the metal
honestly,
cards
I couldn't
we'll
give a
do
shit
t-shirts.
about trading cards.
I know everyone
we'll do
has
t-shirts
their
and stickers on the next one.
Yeah. Okay, so move to Colombia. What about you, Max? Any advice for new creators? Getting into
I'm
crowdfunding?
halfway through packing up my shit and moving to Colombia, to be fair. I'm going to live with
All
Ben.
right, I think that's what we're doing then, boys.
I think it's a
We're
good
all gonna
idea.
meet you
Yeah. We'll smoke weed on the beach and brainstorm
mate.
ideas.
Stare at the cosmic turtles. That's
Yes,
wonderful,
mate.
wonderful idea. All right. So on that note, definitely go back Rokan.
Hell
Let's
yeah.
see if we can get them over their goal line. Not that they need it because they're going to do it anyway. But it would be nice so that Ben doesn't have to pay for it all. Out of his
Crush the
pocket.
goal line. Crush their goal line. Freaking keep on going.
How many days you got left?
24.
Okay, yeah, we got
24.
plenty of
How do we
time.
do this?
Yeah, we have got plenty of time.
24 days to make $800, just under $800.
I think you guys got that. I don't think you should worry at all. We'll just keep promoting. We'll keep posting the links on Twitter,
Absolutely.
on social media, and get more attention on this campaign because it really does deserve
Hey,
it.
24 days. That'll
We
be.
appreciate you guys.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for all the
I think
kind words
we're
about
looking
the.
for more people in May, aren't we? We're talking to some people in May.
Yeah, we got
Yeah,
a
I was
little
just
bit of
saying.
room. We got some
I'm
room.
just saying, like maybe
Yeah,
if
before
we
they
get
close
closer.
out.
Yeah, if you
Before
guys
they
want to
close
come back and
Yeah.
chat with us, you guys are a blast to
Yeah,
talk
absolutely.
to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You
yeah,
guys
like
want
absolutely.
to come back. This has been probably the most interesting conversation we've had about Rokan. The two of
because
you
we
have
talked
been
about the
really,
book. That's the thing. Like,
really insightful. Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. On a lot of the streams, we talk about the crowdfunding and the campaign and your intentions, but really like talking about the story and the book and everything gets people more excited. And I like the creators. I like learning about you guys.
Yeah.
Because it's as much of an investment in you as it is in your product to decide to get involved and to back it.
For sure.
And we like you guys too. A lot of people don't know this, but Aaron reached out to me straight away when I first launched the campaign and gave me some pointers. And Aaron was the one that bought that page as well. So
It's mine.
100%
mine.
I was one, man.
He posted it, and within 4 minutes, I was like,
Dude.
done.
He showed me like
Mine.
After that happened, he like came I came in the door and he rushed me and was like space turtle.
Space turtle.
Yeah.
Cosmic turtle.
Yeah, I know. It's weird.
Oh, mate. Thank you.
Yeah,
Glad that you like
absolutely.
it. It's amazing.
So wonderful. Amanda B
Well, legend.
says they have great interview skills.
Aaron has good
Yeah, they
interview
do.
skills.
Oh, she's
Not
talking
me.
about us. She's talking about us.
Dude.
No, you do too. You jump in and you ask good questions, and we have good dynamics. I don't want to do without you. Let's put it that way. All right, so everybody, back the book. Don't forget to like, subscribe, click that bell for notifications.
And tune into the frequency.
We'll see you next time.